you'll always notice that we have a crucifix placed on the altar so that we, as the priest and the celebrant, as we're standing in the place of Jesus, can be reminded of this love that is shown to us. This love that is shown to us was expressed on the cross. Do we remember those last words that Jesus said when he was hanging there? Bishop Sheen made them famous, like the famous 7 last words of Jesus. There's different ones. We can pull them up for meditation, reflect on. But there's that key prayer that Jesus says as he's dying and is taking his last breath. And it's that phrase, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And he's looking down, right, at those people who are getting ready to stick a sword and pierce his heart. Those people who put the crown of thorns and whipped him like mad. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And yet, that phrase, that prayer applies to all of us today. Today. This is what's so wonderful to know that Jesus is praying for us because we don't know what we're doing. Or do we? Well, that's why we have these scripture passages to remind us to see. Have we gotten off track? Did you hear in the first reading by the prophet Ezekiel is told by God, I have appointed you as a watchman for the house of Israel because things can happen in our lives that can get us off track. And so you have to speak up to remind people. Now, who are those people, though? Is it just people in general, or is it that spouse? Can that spouse get off track? What about those parents of yours? Can they get off track? How about those children? Can they get off track? So Jesus says, speak up, Ezekiel. Speak up and give them this plan. And here's a simple plan that we heard and have heard many times in the gospel. If your brother or sister offends you in any way, this is what I would like you to do, fellow disciples of mine, fellow brothers and sisters. This is the plan. If you do this, it will prevent mountains from growing from molehills. Okay, how many times just a simple little thing happens, and it's like, oh, Dad, you know what? I got a ticket today. I got my first traffic ticket today, Dad. How does Dad respond? Is it a molehill? Is it a mountain? Is it, oh Lord, now my kid's going to be put on death row and then we got to have that talk and boom and all this. And then, does he know what the ticket was all about? Could it have been the tail light broken, not working? But if the pattern started, going in his head, and then it's going to be finally, you're grounded. All of a sudden, from this little thing of a broken taillight to having a life sentence given, could have been prevented. I remember going back a few years in psychology. Remember those days, psychology class? And it was the story called You Could Keep That Darn Jack. I'll soften that phrase, that darn Jack. What was that darn Jack? It was the guy that was driving along, and he gets a flat tire, and it's out in the boonies. I don't know what time of the day it was, but he was going to be late for something, but he pulls over, goes, and he opens up the trunk, and he's going to change his tire. And he just finds out he doesn't have a jack in the trunk. Somebody didn't put it back there. But then he sees up ahead, pretty far up ahead, a gas station there, and he's, oh, okay, I'm going to go up and I'm going to go borrow a jack from the person there. And he's on his way, and then he starts thinking, and he says, gee, I wonder if the guy's going to lend it to me or if he's going to charge me for it. And then he says, oh, no, he'll lend it to me, I'm sure. Well, but here's an opportunity to get extra money, so he might charge me a little more than you would think that he would. And what kind of a society that we live in, and boy, and he gets closer and closer, and he gets all wound up, and then he gets to the person finally, and the guy is all as happy as could be, and he says, welcome. And the guy looks right at him and says, you can keep your darn jack. He talked himself out of it. You made a big story, this little thing. So this is what Jesus is trying to prevent happening in our lives, that we can carry on. We just make up stuff that maybe this is going to happen, maybe it's not going to happen. And he's saying, if somebody offends you, a brother or sister, go to the person first, one-to-one, and talk about it. Get the facts, get the details. If the person doesn't listen to you for whatever reason, and then he goes down the line, but isn't this going to take effort? It's going to take effort. And yet, if it's important enough for us, then we'll do it. And if it was important enough for Jesus, he's showing us his cards, the importance of unity in our world, in our life. And Jesus, unity is so important. He says, we got to do something about it. It was the last Saturday of January, right? When we had a couple of bus loads of our parishioners coming together, hearing these words of God, that when he spoke to Ezekiel and said, people are getting off track, you have to go speak up. So we got in the buses and we went to San Francisco, and we marched, down Market Street to tell our world, to tell our people, you're getting off track with abortion so common, so accepted. We've gotten off track. We have to speak up. So let's go to and speak up. And we did. What about all these protests? What about J Street on the freeway? All these freeways being blocked, people speaking up, saying that people are being treated wrongly and harmfully. Speak up in our way. Always the question is, do we do it in a violent way, or do we do it in a peaceful way? And doesn't it just sound like a peaceful way when Jesus is saying, go to your brother or sister one-on-one, when it's still a molehill and you can reflect on it? It's important to speak up in whatever way we're called to. And the element that has to be present there is that element of, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no evil to the neighbor, St. Paul. So whatever way we choose to talk or to protest or to speak up, for us as disciples of Jesus and followers of him and brothers and sisters to each other, we do it in a way that is loving. Okay? So we come together looking at that crucifix and realizing that Jesus showed that love for all of us to the end. We too will be prompted, knowing that he loves us, and we have to get that message out to each other. Praise be Jesus Christ.